Hi everyone. Good evening. I welcome each one of you to a live episode on how to deliver a great TEDx talk. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you, my dear participants, and I really hope that this session serves you in a way that it adds to your public speaking skills, your presentation skills, your leadership skills, and more importantly, your all round personal development. I am your host, Swaima Ahmed, and it's an absolute delight for me to be here serving you with some kinds of practical, potent methodologies to help you understand the nitty gritty of public speaking and, to be more specific, TEDx talk. So, on that note, it's time for us to get started, participants. Let's remember what Socrates had once said. He said that education is not filling of a vessel, it's kindling of a flame. And I personally believe that without the power of articulation and expression, it's difficult for us to kindle that flame we are talking about. And therefore, empowering yourself with confidence building skills, with articulation, with effective communication is the need of the hour, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. And this episode, this initiative is to actually help you understand what exactly is this power of articulation. How can you manifest it in your everyday life through conversations, through public speeches, through presentations? And as you all know that the episode is absolutely exhilarating because we bring to you some essentials, the foundational part of TEDx talk, and more importantly, we have fun with so many games and entertaining activities. And therefore, now it's time for us to get started. As you see that the agenda is to eventually help you become a great presenter, a great TED speaker, and help you unravel your dazzling oratory skills. Boys and girls, what do we have in store for us today? Let's find out what exactly is it that we will be discussing today. So as you see on the screen right now, our agenda is very simple. It's been quite similar to what we've been following the last 8 episodes as well. We begin with an icebreaker. We move on to the fundamentals of a TED Talk. Then the topic for the day, a strong opening, essentials of a strong opening. We move on to essential 1, essential 2, essential 3. And we make it a point to make the session really exciting with who said this game, fastest fingers first, think smart, at a glance. I also make it a point to actually provide you with some good words that you can incorporate in your vocabulary. I give you some expert tips as well. And coupled with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you something at the end. It's a surprise. It's basically a recommendation that I give at the end of every talk so that you know exactly what to watch when you access YouTube videos on YouTube or when you access TED videos on YouTube. Because I told you the TED world is vast and voluminous. It's difficult to actually find something that could benefit you immediately. And I help you narrow down choices to something very specific, something you can watch right after this episode, after this live session on YouTube and Facebook. So continuing, boys and girls, I'm going to start off with an icebreaker, and I'm going to share some images with you. And to all my participants, I really want you to look at the images and try guessing what profession am I talking about. All right, let's do it. The first one. Very simple. Yes, participants. What do you think? Which profession are we referring to? Obviously, it's the profession of a doctor. Moving on to the next one. What do you think is this profession all about? It's loud and clear, participants. I would appreciate your comments in the comment section. All right, absolutely. That's a teacher's profession. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, I do see some comments here. Yes, it's architect. It's the profession of an architect. Absolutely. Let's move on to the last one, boys and girls. Let's see if you're able to guess the profession using this image. All right, you're absolutely correct. It's that of a lawyer. All right, participants. So that was a quick ice-breaking session for you. Something simple, something that you were easily able to guess and understand. Now it's time for me to have the fundamentals of a TED Talk. So basically, there are three fundamentals of a TED Talk. We've been talking about these three fundamentals since the beginning of our first episode, right? The three fundamentals are a strong opening, an opening that is robust, catchy, and attractive. The second one is a big purpose. A big purpose basically is why are you delivering a talk on this particular topic. Number three is a personal touch, which is all about how do you incorporate a personal touch, your personal experiences, your personal ideas, your personal anecdotes in the talk to make it more personable and more audience friendly. That is basically the fundamentals. Let's see what our focus will be on today. So as you all know, participants, the last class, my topic for you was, we began with number one, self-confidence. We moved on to climate crisis. Then we moved on to body language. In today's session, ladies and gentlemen, we will be exploring the topic Olympics. All right. And we'll try delivering a solid, impressive TED Talk based on the theme Olympics. Let's do it. So as you see on the screen, Olympics are a major international multi-sport event normally held once in 4 years. They were first held in 1896 in Athens, Greece, and were most recently, 2020 Summer Olympics held at Tokyo, Japan in 2021. Very recently, we all know about it, right? So this is the basic intro, and today's TED Talk will be revolving around the theme Olympics. Come on, let's join hands and try making this talk a roaring success, audience-friendly, attractive, informative, and insightful. All right, so we are going to move on. I'm going to walk you through the entire process gradually, comprehensively, and in a wholesome manner, boys and girls. Now, what is the agenda? Today, we'll only talk about the first fundamental, that is a strong opening based on the theme Olympics. So please stay with me, and please be a little more participative and interactive, participants. What's for today? Day one, the first fundamental, that is a strong opening. All right, let's see how we do it. Now, we all know there are three components for strong opening, boys and girls. And what are these three components? The strong opening is all about the opening minute. Number two, the introduction. Number three, the facts. You have to make it a point that if your opening has to be marvelous, it's got to be mind-blowing, it needs to have these three elements: the opening minute, the introduction, and the facts. Let's talk about these three elements in detail, boys and girls. Now, the first one is the opening minute. Let's talk about what this opening minute is all about and how can you make the most of this opening minute by letting it work in your favor wonderfully. So as a speaker, you all know that the first impression is sometimes the longest lasting impression. You know that the first few seconds are really crucial if you want to cut eyes with your audience, impact them, inspire them, and leave them with some major takeaways. So if you are really intending to serve your audience, please remember you have to work rigorously at preparing a solid opening. All right. Now, I told you the opening minute comprises of the three elements. Let's quickly go back to the previous slide. The opening minute, the introduction, the facts. Let's see how the opening minute is actually composed. So as you see on the screen, always begin with a quote. After the quote, you may have a catchy line. Then you may have a positive line. And then you can ask a relevant question. For example, when you actually start off with a quote, boys and girls, remember it gives instant credibility to your speech and you build a rapport with the audience. All right. It means you build a relationship of trust with your audience. That's credibility. And gradually you build a rapport, an association, a bond of love and reciprocity with your audience. So remember to always begin with a quote, no matter what. You can always hunt for the relevant quotes on Google. You'll find a number of them, a plethora of them. Cherry pick the one that you feel is the most relevant to the topic given to you. So the one that I've chosen for you here right now is it's rightly said by Perry Corbitin. The most essential thing, the most important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. Isn't that amazing? Imagine beginning your talk with a quote as powerful as this one, capturing the essence of life, the significance of participation, the significance of life skill, that is involvement in something which leaves you empowered, right? That's the power of beginning with a relevant quote, building credibility with your audience. The next thing you do, my dear participants, is after the quote, you add a positive statement or a catchy line. Now, what really happens when you add a catchy line or a positive statement? It builds interest. Your audience will be keenly interested. It intrigues the listeners. Intrigues excites the listeners. And they really have the sense of curiosity or sense of inquisitiveness. That is, as in, what do I have? What is it? What is there in store for me? So building credibility begins with starting off with a quote, my dear participants, and then finally moving on to adding some positive statements or some catchy lines and topping up your quote with these lines. All right. So what happens is it builds interest and it builds a sense of curiosity. It intrigues your listeners. For example, it's not just about winning the Olympic Games. It's about trying to win. The motto is faster, higher, stronger, not fastest, highest, strongest. Sometimes it's the trying that really matters the most. Imagine having a line as optimistic as this one. Because as a TED speaker, you've got to give a solution-oriented approach. You've got to have optimistic lines in the beginning itself. You cannot begin with your fretting and fuming, right? So here we talk about how you need to be trying your best, putting your best foot forward, walking an extra mile, comparing your performance to your performance, and not trying to be the best in every event or tournament. That's what the catchy line of the positive statement is about. The next thing that we do, my dear participants, is raise a relevant question. Now, what is meant by raising a relevant question? It simply means asking a question that is either closed-ended or open-ended, but relevant to the topic. Now, what really happens when you raise a question? Two things. Number one, you build a connection with your audience. All right? You're building a connection with your audience every time you raise a question because you arouse curiosity in them. Number two, as the sentence says, creating curiosity in them. They'll be intrigued. They really want to know more. And it's in the hands of the speaker as to how boring, how interesting he sounds, how powerful, how powerless he sounds. So please make sure that you take advantage of this opportunity and you give it your best. Let's take an example of how to raise a relevant question. Have you ever watched any of these Olympic matches? Have you been hooked to it? That's an interesting question, right? Because somehow we've all watched Tokyo Olympics. May not be every game, but yes, specific games that we really like and enjoy and cherish. So you can ask a question like this to actually hook your audience and eventually make your opening minute quite wholesome and holistic. So number one, quote, beginning with a quote. Number two, topping it up with a catchy line and then having a positive statement. And finally, raising a relevant question. Moving on, my dear participants, let me quickly give an expert tip to you. And what is the expert tip here? While talking about Olympics, while talking about topics like Olympics, make sure to talk about themes like sportsmanship, camaraderie, association, team spirit. You need to have these powerful, dominating, and positive words in your talk when you're delivering a talk on something like Olympics or anything sports related. Now, let me quickly give you a word that you can add to your vocabulary. Camaraderie. Beautiful word in the English language, which actually means mutual trust and friendship among people. Camaraderie. Synonyms could be friendship, associationship, comradeship, etc., etc. For example, the camaraderie between the school friends was very strong. Camaraderie. Okay. Now, participants, another game for you. Who said this? I told you, if you want to be a powerful TED speaker, you need to be having a journal wherein you make a note of all your quotes, all your anecdotes, your short stories, your fun facts, and you can actually use them at any point of time in any conversation, in any discussion, in any talk, in any presentation, in any elevator speech, in any kind of interaction you have with people. Let's talk about the first one. I took a deep breath and listened to the old brag of my heart. I am. I am. I am. Let's see who said this. Any guesses? Well, it's said by Sylvia Plath. Now, Sylvia Plath again is a very prominent literary figure. And since I've been telling you that it's always a good idea to incorporate quotes from famous texts, from famous poems, from famous sonnets, and always make a point to quote it, have the name of the writer or the author or the poet. The next quote I have for you is, we are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us. What an incredibly powerful quote. And that is a quote said by Charles Bukowski. Now, I told you, boys and girls, that having literary lines from texts, from poems, from playwrights, it's a fabulous idea. But the only challenge is to hunt for the right one and find the relevant ones for the topic given to you. The next one is, when all the wars are over, a butterfly will still be beautiful. That shows a ray of hope, in dark times of plight. That's a beautiful quote by Ruskin Bond. And when all the wars are over, a butterfly will still be beautiful. All right, participants. Now coming to the second element of the introduction. The first one was the opening minute, comprising of number one, a quote, followed by a positive line, a catchy line, and raising a relevant question. The next thing we would do is we'll introduce the topic. After the opening minute, we move on to the introduction. Now, how do you introduce a topic, my dear participants? You always try associating it with any past or present event. All right, you try associating your topic to any past event or a present event. Let me give you some examples of this. For example, the Olympic Games are considered the world's foremost sports competition with more than 200 nations participating. That's a fun fact. That's about the introduction. You can also have something like the Olympic Games are normally held every 4 years, alternating between the summer and the winter Olympics every 2 years in the 4-year period. All right. So we are basically providing our audience with generic information on the topic given to us. So please make sure that you always begin after you're done with the opening minute, you move on to the introduction, wherein you lucidly, simply introduce the topic using simple sentences, but powerful information. Now, let me quickly give you one more word to add to your vocabulary, my dear participants. And the word is accomplishment. Accomplishment basically is something that has been achieved successfully, like an achievement, right? Sarah was praised for her accomplishments, for the feats, for the good work you've done, for the remarkable work you've done. That's accomplishment. Now, let's quickly play a game called the Fastest Fingers. Answer these questions related to Olympics. Let's see if you can do that. The first question is dancing an Olympic sport? I'm sure the answer is loud and clear. It isn't, right? But there's an exception here. Break dancing would be included in the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. So that's something in the pipeline. The next question, my dear participants, is football an Olympic sport? Yes, we all know it is. Football is an Olympic sport. The next question for you, boys and girls, is, do a majority of nations participate in Olympics? Yes, we've discussed this earlier as well. 200 plus nations take part in the Olympics in every season. The next question, is snakes and ladders played at Olympics? What do you think? Well, we know it, that the answer is a big no. There's no game as snakes and ladders at the Olympics. So basic information to keep in mind before you actually convey that information to your audience with conviction. Now, coming to my expert tip, my first expert tip was, please make sure that you use powerful words like camaraderie, sportsman spirit, teamwork, etc. My another tip for you, boys and girls, is when speaking on topics like Olympics, make sure that your information is accurate, precise, to the point, and updated. Really important. You need to be sharing updated information with your audience so that they can rely on you and they can trust you blindly with the information you're sharing with them. So please make sure you cross-check your information before you present it. All right. The third element that you need to incorporate, boys and girls, is number 3, the facts. When you share some fun, fascinating facts with your audience, but accurate ones, of course, your audience will be keenly interested. It makes your point more believable, and you build trust, a relationship of trust with your audience. How do we to it, boys and girls. Let me give you a couple of examples to help you understand that. In the first modern Olympic Games of 1896, there were no gold medals. We didn't know that, right? We didn't know that. That's the purpose of a good presenter. You have to provide your audience with some path-breaking and groundbreaking information. There's another fact you can add to it. Gold medals are not made of pure gold. Did you know that? I didn't. Let's add one more fact to it. No Olympic Games were held in 1916, 1940, 1944 due to world wars. So if there was one event globally that cancelled the Olympic Games, it was the World War, because we know the gravity of destruction caused during World War. Moving on, my dear participants, let me quickly ask you a question. Which country hosts Olympics? Is it Britain? Is it Japan? Is it USA? Or it changes every time? You know the answer. It changes every time, because countries are actually assigned, the honor of hosting Olympic Games. There's another question I have for you participants. In which year Olympics weren't held? 1918, 1944, none of the above. We just discussed this a few minutes ago, 1944, because of the World War II. All right, participants. Now, I'm going to give you a quick recommendation. A recommendation basically is to help you understand what to watch immediately after watching this episode. And, there are plethora of videos on YouTube, and I really want you to pick one that is very relevant for you right now. I request all my participants today who are watching me live and who will be watching a broadcast to watch the TED Talk titled The Origins of the Olympics. Very insightful talk on what exactly is the mission, the vision behind Olympics, and how do various nations come together to align themselves to that kind of a mission. And now at a glance, basically in today's session, we talked about TEDx talk, a strong opening, and the theme we had chosen was Olympics, my dear friends. And we talked about number one, the opening minute, comprising of number one, a quote, a catchy line, positive statement, and raising a relevant question. We move on to the intro, wherein you introduce the topic and you relate your topic to a recent event or the past event. And finally, you have some fun facts that you share with your audience. Now, in tomorrow's session, boys and girls, I'm going to be talking about a big purpose. The theme would remain the same. The theme would, of course, be Olympics. And we will dive deep into a big purpose. So please do stay tuned with me. Please make sure you're relentlessly applying all the mantras we're discussing in these episodes. And I'll be so happy to see you once again tomorrow, host you, and probably serve you with something more novel, more life-changing, and more powerful. Thank you so much for joining in, participants. I'm going to see you in the next episode. Till then, take care and have a peaceful night. Thank you.